Here are humans doing things that they're not meant to be doing.
For the past year, their existence has been known to just a handful of experts who have been sworn to secrecy. When I heard of it myself, I was intrigued, but nothing prepared me for the reality. Now, finally, the secret can be revealed.
The immediate response I had was that I couldn't believe my eyes. I had never expected that, even under the most extraordinary scientific fantasy, that modern human beings could return to an animal state.
In scientific terms, it was the equivalent of finding living, breathing fossils. Human beings who had never made the evolutionary leap of standing upright. The quest to find out why took a team of scientists on an amazing journey and raised profound questions about what it is to be human.
The thing which marks us off from the rest of the animal world is the fact that we're the species which walks on two legs and holds our heads high in the air.
It's what defines us as human beings.
In many ways, yes, of course, there's language and all sorts of other things too, but it's terribly important to our sense of ourselves as being different from others in the animal kingdom. These people cross that boundary.
Professor Nick Humphrey is an evolutionary psychologist. He first heard of the family through a medical paper produced by Turkish scientists.
It looked as if we really did have something rather like a throwback in evolution, a turning back of the evolutionary clock.
If the family proved to be true quadrupeds, walking on all fours, they may provide the elusive missing link between man and ape. There are 4 girls and 1 young man. Hussein has walked like this for 28 years.
Very revealing for anthropologists, people who study early human evolution, because what these children have done is to reinvent or rediscover a form of locomotion which very likely does correspond pretty closely to the way our ancestors walked.
Fossils tell us we probably first became bipeds around 4 million years ago. Since then, we have become beautifully adapted for moving on 2 feet. So why, for the first time in eons, are human beings again walking on 4? There was a certain amount of speed that...
This guy, Hussein, can outrun me, yes.
At Liverpool University in England, another team has found a way to examine the skeletons ethically. Hussein's movements are identical to an ape or monkey, ideally suited for balancing on branches.
These people are not missing links, but they have shown us how our ancestors did behave.
The point of showing that story is to highlight that humans still possess the anatomy and spinopelvic morphology for locomotion and movement almost identical to our ancestors of 4 million years ago. What we can infer from this is that the biomechanics of quadruped movement are the ideal biomechanics for our lumbar spine and pelvis. If we extrapolate this to elite level functional movement, such as Olympic weightlifting, which requires perfection in movement technique to move heavy loads large distances very quickly, you appreciate the same biomechanical principles in action: hip-centric rotation, neutral spine awareness, posterior kinetic chain powered movement, unloaded knee positions are all clearly visible. Now let's observe the same movement points of performance being expressed in a beautiful creature that is transitioning between quadruped and bipedal movement. So here's our ancient ancestor 4 million years ago, squatting down, neutral spine position, hip-centric rotation, posterior kinetic chain engaged, unloaded knee positions. Just perfect biomechanics. And now he's moving like a quadruped. Again, neutral spine position, hip-centric rotation, You can see the large gluteus maximus and the posterior kinetic chain developed for movement. Here's his friend, and again, perfect movement points of performance expressed all of the time. Now he's walking upright, and you can see he's a biped now, but he's still maintaining those movement points of performance that we as human beings should also be maintaining throughout our everyday life activities, because our anatomy is designed for that type of movement. Many people don't know what the posterior kinetic chain is. It's a real structure that everyone possesses and is a musculo-tendinous band that runs from the top of your head down the back of your spine and to the sole of your foot. It's the engine for your movement. It needs to be conditioned and coordinated. The result of being deconditioned and incoordinated is musculoskeletal joint pain, particularly the vulnerable lumbar spine that is now in an upright bipedal posture when previously it was horizontal in a quadruped position, a lot more resilient to the disease of movement dysfunction, which we now are exposed to if we move poorly in our activities of daily living. Let's take a look at some of these poor movements. You may not recognize them to be poor, but they are breaking all the rules of movement proficiency and hence constitute movement dysfunction. If you move like this, you may not have symptoms yet, but you do suffer from the disease of movement dysfunction, and musculoskeletal joint pain will develop because biomechanical stress leads to biological inflammation, which drives premature joint destruction and obvious pain and disability. It is preventable and reversible with specific and distinctive neurorehab functional movement therapy. Even in formal workplace health and safety guidelines, the information is often misleading. It's clear that much of the industry does not define movement dysfunction comprehensively. On the left-hand side, the lumbar spine is rounded and very vulnerable to biomechanical stress and instability, which will cause acute injury. But even in the other two images, although the spine is straight or neutral, the posterior kinetic chain is deactivated and the knees are loaded. This removes an opportunity for a movement task to drive health into the spinopelvic structures. Repetitive movement like this, or kneeling, will lead to a deconditioning and incoordination of the posterior kinetic chain. This must be prevented at all costs to maintain lifelong healthy spinopelvic biomechanics, capacity and stability that's required to meet the functional demands of your individual lifestyle. Now let's take a look at some movement tasks of everyday life that are performed with movement proficiency rather than movement dysfunction. And it doesn't matter whether it's a heavy task or a trivial task like lifting up the grocery bags or brushing your teeth or having to get down low to the ground to pick up an object. The movement points of performance can be expressed throughout movement tasks of daily living. It doesn't matter whether you're a young baby or an elderly grandma. Throughout the whole of life, movement proficiency should be maintained, and this is not an unrealistic expectation for the human body. When we analyse movement with movement sensors, we can see clear differences between dysfunctional movement and proficient movement. Learning how to move proficiently again doesn't come naturally. It does require specific and distinctive therapy and we refer to this as neurorehab functional movement therapy. Many patients with back pain will have for many years been engaging in stretching and strengthening, in particular core strengthening, with a lot of exercises for many years, and still be suffering from their back pain. And that's because strength does not mandate skill, and hence why we refer to our program as neurorehab, because we are rehabilitating the skill of movement, which is a neurological attribute, not a strength attribute. Remember, strength does not mandate skill. In conclusion, and my last point is that much of the peer-reviewed literature at the moment describes back pain as non-specific low back pain. This means that researchers and clinicians have effectively given up on identifying a cause for a ubiquitous and highly prevalent condition such as back pain. And if you've given up on identifying a cause for back pain, then it's highly likely that any future treatment intervention is going to fail. And we know that back pain does have a cause, it must have a cause, and we've assigned that as the disease of movement dysfunction. If you are going to eliminate back pain, you must eliminate the cause of back pain, and you must eliminate movement dysfunction. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it helps you move through your back pain journey to a successful outcome. Please, if you need some assistance, get in contact with the Functional Movement Training Centre. My name's Dr. David Johnson. All the best in health to you. Bye bye now.